stand before you students, faculty, families, and community members who have gathered to recognize and uplift the incredible diversity, resilience, and contributions of Swana cultures, both here in the United States and around the world. I'm Sumaya Bezrati. I'm the director for the Middle Eastern Islamic Studies program here at CSUN. We have a minor. I really encourage all of you guys to enroll in the minor. We're going to put the QR code up later. You can scan it, take us to our website. It's only 19 units, and it's really important work. On top of that, we have a brand new class that's coming in the fall. I'm going to teach it. It's called Arabs and Muslims in the U.S. And
the first class, guys.
And so if what you hear today inspires you or invokes questions in you, or you just like it, I would really strongly encourage you to enroll in my class next semester, because we're really going to be touching on a lot of the things that you're going to hear about today. I want to thank our hosts, the USU, for making this event possible, and extend deep gratitude to the panel of students here who are going to share their stories, traditions, and hopes for our community's future. Today is about listening to the languages, histories, cuisines, dances, and lived experiences that weave together our rich tapestry of heritage. Swana Heritage Month reminds us that our region encompasses dozens of countries, myriad of faiths, and countless diasporas. Our ancestors forged cultures of learning, innovation, and hospitality. Here in the U.S., Swana communities have enriched every field, from science and medicine to art, literature, and public service. Yet, as we celebrate today, we must also confront challenges threatening our academic programs and many of our students. In recent weeks, as many as 300 international students have had their U.S. visas revoked over alleged pro-Palestinian campus activism, a move that chills free expression and academic inquiry. Likewise, faculty and administration at major universities are under extreme pressure as the federal government is threatening to withdraw millions in funding and impose oversight over our Middle Eastern studies and Islamic studies programs throughout campuses in the US, just like ours here at CSUN. It undermines the very foundations of scholarly freedom. These actions echo broader efforts to silence Swana voices and erase our narratives from curricula and public discourse. But our stories and our right to tell them are stronger than any political maneuver. By standing here today, we affirm that Swana and Mina scholarship, art, and activism belong at the heart of American intellectual and cultural life. So let us listen intently, ask questions boldly, and leave inspired to advocate for fair treatment of our programs and protection of our students. Thank you for being here, for your support, and for carrying forward the legacy of Swana communities everywhere. It's my pleasure to introduce our student panel, each of whom brings a unique perspective on heritage, identity, and the pathways forward. Please join me in welcoming them.
My name is Angelica Hakim. I have mixed cultures, so I'm Yemeni, mixed with Hispanic culture and American.
Hello everyone, my name is Amin. Because I'm Muslim, I'm going to give an Islamic reading, Assalamu alaikum, which in Arabic means may God's peace and blessings be upon you. And I want to preface by firstly thanking the organizers. Thank you, Sada Sumaya. Thank you for the employees who kind of helped make today happen. I'm very excited to be here. I just want to preface that. And I myself am an Iranian Azerbaijani Muslim. And I'm very excited to kind of share more on why I choose these specific labels to even kind of present forward, because I think there's a lot of meaning with that. And I was born here, and I'm very proud to be able to be a part of not only holding on to the titles in which I came from, and then also being present here in California. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Katie Karoum. My family and myself are Syrian. My family immigrated here, so I'm a first-generation citizen, first-generation student. I speak Arabic at home. My family is Christian, and I'm happy to be here and sit on the panel.
Hope everybody's doing well. First and foremost, I'm from Afghanistan and Pakistan, so I'm mixed. It's kind of rare, I hope, hopefully. But first and foremost, I'm Muslim. That's the thing I take most pride in, and the rest of the stuff we can get to later. Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Salman Dilshad. I'm Pakistani Muslim. I'm the first of my family that was born in the States and a first-generation college student.
Thank you. Okay, let's start with Maryam on the end here. What do you want to tell us about your culture and heritage?
So to me and my culture, family is always number one and the most important. And my parents have always told me that no matter what, family will be by your side and there to support you. So I think that's something that's from both cultures that I'm from that's pretty similar. With me and my family, I partake in both, like a lot of different holidays for both cultures. Like this past Ramadan and Lent, it's just because both my parents knew that being married with two different cultures and religions, that they can't really force one religion on their kids, and it's more as a choice because that's how religion should be. And I think it's important that way. Also being like the oldest of two siblings, I know that if I show that I am open to celebrating all traditions and all cultures, that my sisters will also know the same. And just know that it's okay if they want to celebrate with both or choose one in the future.
All right, Bismillah. So a question I want to kind of pose is, because once again, I introduced myself as Iranian, Azerbaijani Muslim, right? And as I'm firstly choosing to say Iranian versus Persian, this is something already that a lot of people notice, but there's even some challenge understanding. I actually struggled to understand this as well to some extent. And I want to preface that, number one, before mentioning anything, I've not studied culture. I'm not professional in what I'm saying. This is personal experience, my own interpretation of a lot of things. And so please don't take me as the one and be all role model for understanding these sort of things. So with that being said, there's this huge stigma I feel in my community with, are you going to call yourself Iranian or Persian? And obviously it's going to go tying back to, there's a lot of things kind of politically happening in the world. However, there's an aspect in this where we have to ask the question, where do you separate culture from religion? And this is something that I want to pose because really there has to be a way where the religion is not silencing the culture, and also the culture is not tainting or changing what the religion is. And it's very challenging to be able to balance this because, of course, there's always going to be authoritative regime, there's always going to be cultural norms, there's always going to be all these effects on these sort of things. For myself personally, how I've come to really understand and think about my religion and my culture, especially living in a sort of codependent mode, is there's a belief in Islam where the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he didn't come to necessarily erase religion, and this is something that I think can be confused with what's going on politically in the world. It came to purify it, and what that means is not forcing. Once again, we have even a verse in the Quran, la ikraha fi din. There is no compulsion, there is no force in religion. So you can't come and force traditions or practices upon someone else. And I think that's very important to preface. And at the same time, there's an upheld of, even coming from this religious perspective, of justice, of ethics, of dignity within them. And so there's a lot of times actually I've noticed within specific aspects of culture, because it's seen to, let's say, bring together the family, to bring together the community, there's actually an emphasis to, hey, there's times in which you want to be able to express these cultural aspects, to be able to express these differences, and it's very important to you. And even culture is spoken so highly in the Quran and in the teachings of Islam. Even being so, where it mentions, God mentions, I've created you different cultures so you can get to know each other. There's a purpose behind it. I think even this purpose connects back to even the culture as an Iranian. There's this huge focus on thought, on community, and on belief. Where if you go, usually, I've yet to meet an Iranian that does not have, or a Persian even, however way you want to classify it, who does not have this deep care about what they believe. There's this emphasis, and even with a lot of cultures, I want to preface, there's this level of importance that comes with it. There's a level of importance that comes with our neighbors, especially with how we treat them, as whether Persian or even as a Muslim, both. And continuing that, I feel like this, because of these aspects of culture, I really have felt the internalization kind of growing up. However, there are definitely times in myself, I'll even touch upon this when we talk about stereotypes and misconceptions, where there was a lot of fear actually to even say, I'm an Iranian Muslim. My father, my uncle, growing up, they came, they moved to California, had nothing to do with what's happening back home necessarily. But just because people would hear, oh, you're an Iranian Muslim, there would be teachers at elementary and middle school, in high school, who literally they held my dad at his collar and they said, bring back our hostages, or do crazy statements that they're saying to kids. And it's where is this kind of hatred, where is this kind of attitudes coming from? And I think even, one second, I don't want to take up too much time, and I'll leave it as here, and I'll touch upon this again when I talk on misconceptions. What it means to be curious. Thank you.
So I started by saying my family's from Syria, so I really do classify myself as Syrian American. I didn't unfortunately grow up in the culture in the country of Syria. Some people are shocked by the fact that I can say, I've been to Syria. I think as a collective, people know that Syria is tainted by foreign relations and war and, killing and destruction. And I'll touch on that more in the next question, but that's kind of what my upbringing has been tainted through, especially post 9/11. I'm sure all Arabs and Muslims can relate that there was a flip of how we were treated because of 9/11. And, I was born in 2003, so didn't really understand what life was like prior in the Western world. But, I grew up being called a terrorist. I grew up being, claimed as ISIS or whatever, And on top of that, I'm Christian. I grew up Christian, and I personally don't practice really any religion. But to say that I'm Christian in comparison to, again, the misconception of all Arabs being Muslim, and that's not to say as a Christian being Muslim is an offense or anything, not at all. But it's just the automatic assumption, and that's been something that not to say is a challenge for me, but something that I also have to face growing up. And then another thing is that I'm openly queer, and I think collectively, again, don't want to speak for everyone, but Arabs really understand that being queer is not something that is accepted, not something that is encouraged in the Arab world and and any of the Swana regions. And it's been something that I've had to tackle really my whole life, and has proven to be a big contributor to my own identity crisis and code switching, and if I'm feminine with my family, but then I'm masculine with my friends, or how I want to act and what I decide to talk about, or whenever my family is like, Katie, do you have a boyfriend yet? And I'm like, man, they still ask me that. I have a lot of friends that are like, Katie, how does your family not know? Like, whatever. And it's like, it's never that simple. I mean, if you're talking to people that did not grow up around, like, I'll say this very openly, like, my family, they grew up around people that looked like them, that talked like them, that thought like them. There's a lot of groupthink with, I'll speak for, like, in Syria in particular. So coming to America, where the Western world, and specifically California, and then specifically Los Angeles, there's a lot of conflicting values, different religions, different races, different ethnicities, and the fact that was really new to my family, especially being Christian, and their experience being Christian in Syria has been, is also another facet, and how they decide to treat other people from different religions, because Christianity in the Swana region is a minority, and it's a very small minority, and it's becoming more and more and more of a minority. And that adds on to a lot of the grievances that they have towards people that are different from them, and that had to project onto me, and really tainted my upbringing, my childhood. But I love the culture. I love the music. Debke is like the best dance that you can ever see at any party. Like, we have the best weddings. It's the best food, healthiest food. But yeah, I mean, I have so much love for the culture, and I think having a panel like this, and having young Arabs and Muslim and people that are from the Swana region talk about these things is a really, really, really big step forward into acknowledging that we have a lot of problems. There's a lot of problems from how we identify with and the way that the Western world sees us. So making them known is very important.
Well, I don't know if my perspective is as insightful as the rest, but I guess we'll see. I'm from Afghanistan and Pakistan. I'm a war refugee, but I grew up in Malaysia, so it's like all over the place. And then moved in around almost when it was 2010. We moved to the U.S. and then the rest of the years I was in Idaho, and then we came here. Say 2018. It was like 2017 December, so we're just gonna say 2018. But basically, in terms of culture, I don't really take from one culture. It's kind of like everything, so easy for me to adapt to whatever's kind of there. I speak languages on both sides. I speak Dari, Urdu, and some other ones too, but we're not, I did forget Bahasa, which is the language of Malaysia. But as a kid, if you don't speak a language, you're gonna forget it if there's no one to speak it to. In terms of heritage, I think first and foremost, I definitely take more pride in being a Muslim than anything else. But however, being, Pakistani and Afghan, it shouldn't be overlooked or thrown to the side just because I'm Muslim. I think it's what makes us unique. But what brings us together is the humanity that we all have, right, among ourselves. Afghanistan, I haven't been in forever, inshallah, but I do want to go. Right now is like the perfect time to go. I don't know if people watch the media or whatever, and they have this misconception, that's probably the third question, isn't it? But we'll just dive into it a little bit. But Afghanistan is a beautiful country. It's amazing, and too bad it was ruined, Soviet invasion, foreign affairs with the US as well as the Taliban. But whatever you hear right now, all the bad stuff, I guarantee you that's not true. Okay, do not listen to CNN or whatever the case may be. Afghanistan is a good place right now. It's safe, it's beautiful, the food is good, the people are good, it's a great place to go. As for Pakistan, I was supposed to go with my dad. He actually left 3 days ago, but school wasn't able to go. But both countries very rich in culture. The food is great. I'll give you my personal advice. If you want places, ask me. That's all I got for now.
So my background places a lot of value on the cultural and religious background, and I don't think you can really tell the story of my life without bringing that into account. Every decision I made was in a manner in which I could manifest the values that my parents aimed to instill in me. And I think role model helps a lot. Like my father working night shifts to provide for our family, come from his background, his culture. the importance of maintaining family, the importance of protecting people. So we grew up, we were the only South Asian family that grew up in a very small community. So much of my childhood was defined by like racism and xenophobia, being called a terrorist. It was rare to have a day where you weren't called that, my classmate. And I vividly remember when a month after I graduated high school, I was still 17 at the time, and I got grabbed by my collar and by a much older man and physically assaulted. And then I was the first in my family to attend college. I did everything right. I went to Fullerton, got a 4.0, graduated with Kines, became the first doctoral student in my family, and I came out to LA. And right when I felt like I was finally at a place where maybe I'm in a more diverse area where I can finally be proud of my culture, I remember in our first year of my doctoral program, I had a classmate referred to me as a terrorist. It was very eye-opening because, like I said, I felt like I did everything right. I made all the right decisions, and you just realize it's not something you can run away from. There's going to be moments where you feel comfortable and you feel like, oh, people can overlook some of that stuff, but it stays with you. And I think that's a gnawing feeling, which I'll let the other panelists attest to, but for me, I realized you can never get too comfortable. And it's very hard to maintain your values. It's like holding on to a rock, you know, like you want to be Muslim, like you want to tell people you're celebrating Ramadan or you're doing this, but you understand that comes with negative perceptions. And yeah, it's hard to enter a room knowing that you might be negatively perceived and you don't necessarily know who's going to be open to it and who's not. But the reason that I mentioned that my family has been at the forefront of all these decisions is because that's what keeps me going. I know that everything I do is for them, and that's been my real catalyst for how far I've come.
Okay. Our next question is, how do you wish to challenge stereotypes or misconceptions that may exist about your heritage or culture?
So to me, a stereotype I've noticed like a lot of people would think is if you tell someone you're anywhere from like the Swana region, you are automatically someone that speaks Arabic fluently, and that's that. Like that's your main first language. To me, growing up in a mixed culture household, my mom's not main language, but she speaks Spanish, and my dad, he's fluent in Arabic. When I was growing up, I was put in Saturday and Sunday school learning Arabic, so technically I went to school basically 7 days a week, which wasn't that bad, actually. I liked it. So, but yeah, just a stereotype that all like Arabic, like all Arabs just speak Arabic is just, to me, it kind of made me feel like I need to know the language, and if I didn't, then it was like, well, why are you calling yourself an Arab? Why are you using like this identity? And to me, it's just, well, my dad speaks Arabic, so I knew it was a language that is, to me, a must. So it's not something that I felt really forced on, but in some ways it could be telling people that I was Arab. But also making sure that I knew like a Spanish language as well. So just, yeah, I don't know, like, I don't really know how, like, I guess challenging it would be like, I guess kind of showing that I could get through in life, calling us being as Arab, but also mixed, that I don't have, I could just speak English and it's totally okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to say I saw some hands, and I just want to say we are going to have questions at the end, so just hold on to your questions. Go ahead, Andy.
Just a kind of time check. What time are we going until like 1?
Till 1 o'clock.
Till 1 o'clock. Okay. I want to start off by first posing and asking you guys, what is a stereotype? So if any hands you want to kind of be able to answer. What, like, just the first thing that comes to mind when you think stereotype, what is the first thing that usually comes from that?
A greatly misinformed preconception of a culture.
Preconception of a culture. Okay. Very nice. Okay. So I think it's very important when defining each of these terms very carefully, right? So we have stereotypes, but I think also when talking about stereotypes, you have to talk about what is prejudice, what is discrimination, and what is racism. I think these four can be confused. I think these four can kind of see overlap, but I think making very clear distinctions is important. And I'm gonna a little bit, because of my psychology background, talk a little bit about this, because I think it's very in tune with what I'm gonna say afterwards. So a stereotype, we can see it as it's purely cognitively based. It's a thought. It's a generalized belief about a whole group that you're going to be making general beliefs based on somebody. For example, as an Iranian Persian, a lot of times you'll see, oh, you're going to be, let's say just because I go to school, you're going to be an engineer. Or I'm going to be choosing something along those lines of schooling. That's an example of a stereotype. So it's a thought, it's cognitively based. And the one after, so prejudice, but once again, okay, so staying on stereotype, it stays at the level of an individual to an individual. It's not yet looking at the larger circles in society, right? So it's just on an individual basis. The same with prejudice. So to be prejudiced, same concepts, you're going to be having an attitude or a biased opinion about a person based on an assumption rather than an actual experience. And so this one is more going to be going into emotional than cognitive. So for example, as an Iranian or Persian, I'm going to try to, let's say I'm going to be a terrorist, or I'm going to specifically do something that is harmful, or like someone even, let's say, not liking my group of individuals. So it's more kind of connected to emotional. And then one after that comes discrimination. I think this is now, we're starting to see a shift now in what exactly is happening. It's not just between person A to person B. And now with discrimination, we see there's actual behavior. There's something being done. It's no longer just a thought or a feeling. There's an action being taken place that can be unjust treatment of a category of people or an individual just based on what label you choose to put upon yourself. And I think it's very important to even talk about labelism, of how powerful it can be, and then how also our minds can want to jump naturally to pulling all of these beliefs and pulling all these attitudes, just to already want to create beliefs in how to think of people, right? And I think this is one thing that's very important to also mention. Naturally, our brain would rather create an incorrect pattern than have to sit in chaos. What does that mean? That means that just because you don't understand something happening, we know, and this is proven, I would rather, and not I, more like cognitively and emotionally, how it's kind of structured in our minds, would rather have something incorrect just to hold on to, because holding on to something at times can feel more comforting, it can bring more homeostasis versus there being chaos. And so the step after that, so we said stereotype, prejudice, discrimination, and then finally racism. I think this is probably the most misunderstood one, because racism, especially isms, ism is a very powerful concept, and we have many types of isms that exist, is not just a person and an injustice, and now goes into the larger systems at play. Institutions, hospitals, government. There is now this take on having a change. Like for example, let's say I'm coming to apply to a university. An example of racism would be how I'm now treated, let's say in my application, or let's say I'm applying to work, how that's going to be dealt with. And usually, a lot of the time, this is not just a one person being like, oh, okay, no, this person's this, I'm just gonna cast them aside. No, it's actually, we have set, and over the years, especially with our history as a country, have built in a lot of policies and direct actions that are directly harmful towards people's cultures, people's backgrounds, and it's very important to make this distinction, because a lot of people think, oh yeah, racism is just one person walking down the street and hey, you're at this, you're at that. But no, it's so much more than that. And even if you ask, this is what's very interesting even, if there's been studies where if you go to individuals who come from specific cultures and you ask them, hey, like usually specific cultures that get more racism towards them, and you ask them, how do you think about racism? Do you think about it being an individual, oh, hey, someone just calling you out, or is it more than that? Statistically speaking, way more than 50% of people from these cultures that experience racism will notice it's actually way beyond that. It's not the individual. They see it as a systematic approach. It's how our institutions treat us. It's how the government treats us. So it's more than just that. So now kind of pulling this back, because the question was, okay, I mean, how do you exactly face stereotyping in my own culture? And I think now that we're able to kind of define that stereotyping is this one-on-one basis, I've noticed that people, I've mentioned this before, people want to assume. People naturally assume. And even there's a lot of times, a lot of mental processes are based on assumption. So it's like, I understand that. I understand that we want to assume, but it's nature. But just because it's nature does not make an excuse to now classify someone. And so once again, you start with stereotype and you move into discrimination to now treat someone unjustly. All of us naturally are going to have these sort of stereotypes. And just to kind of name a few, some stereotypes in which I face is very similar to the people on this panel. Obviously, it's going to be name calling. It could be looking down upon. It can be how I'm spoken of behind my back, to my face, how serious someone's going to take me just because of a label. Like, there's been people who, like, I'll have a really fantastic conversation, an intellectual conversation with, like, professionals about, hey, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to study. And they said, oh, okay, so what are you studying? Oh, I'm studying Islamic psychology. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. And just because, like, now there's this label that's put on it, all of a sudden, like, whatever I've expressed, it's kind of just been kind of pushed to the side because of the label. So being curious and I want to mention, not immediately nulling your perspective without hearing about it. Because I feel like I myself and everyone here has faced that experience a lot. And I'll end off with this. Being able to separate people and actions from culture and religion. There's a lot of people and there's a lot of acts that happen around the world that are not representative of the full image. I think you can kind of see, me being Iranian, what that can mean. You can assume on that one. But just knowing there is a separation. You cannot just say, hey, just because you come from this certain background, this is not going to represent the entirety of your culture and the entirety of your religion. Islam is not something, nor the Iranian culture is not something that is trying to force hate. Even if you principally look at every culture, universally, majority of religions, majority of cultures in terms of their base essence goes back to compassion, empathy, understanding, all of these roots that are within them. And so once again, please just always be curious. Don't look at a label for what it is and learn more about what an individual and who an individual is. Thank you.
That was good. I'm going to have a hard time following up. But I'll kind of pick up where I left off at my last answer. So I visited Syria a couple times before the war started in around 2000. I mean, some people say it differently. Like, some people say 2011, some people say 2013. But I had gone a couple times prior, and really the main thing that I noticed is, hospitality. That's the biggest takeaway that you can probably get from any one in Syria is they care. And that's not something that we see here. I think and to touch on Amin's point, I think a lot of us see people for what we want to believe about them, and we make preconceived notions about how they're going to act and what they're going to say, and then we treat them as such. But I think it might have helped that in Syria, again, people look the same, people act the same, people thought the same to some degrees, at least way, way more than here, And I think foreign relations are definitely been the biggest catalyst to any misconceptions that you can find on anyone in the Swana region, and in particularly Syrians. What is being portrayed on the news, how people speak about us, what people instill on their kids when they're younger to feel about certain races, ethnicities, and religions. And the terrorist jokes that I said in my answer prior is not a joke. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people that identify within the Swana region can say that they've been called a terrorist once or twice in their life. And it's hard to hear that, if you're, 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old. And it's unfortunate because the real misconception is that, we're dangerous, or we all do think the same, and we actually all do act the same. And it's harder to say, it's harder to relate to that moving here. Well, I didn't move here. My family moving here and immigrating here, and me being a very different byproduct of a traditionally Syrian family. And I mean, I said it prior, but I do identify as queer. I don't identify within kind of female or feminine stereotypes in terms of my gender expression. I think one of the biggest things is my complexion, and a lot of people assume automatically that I'm white, which works in some ways and doesn't work in other ways. Helps me in TSA. Yeah, and it's ironic, but it's all these misconceptions, and I think a lot of them start from the media and what we see in movies and what we see in TV shows, especially in the early 2000s, post 9/11. Just all of the hateful rhetoric that goes around about Arabs and Muslims, and it's a real shame. And I think the biggest way that I personally challenge all misconceptions about my identity is by just not being silent and taking opportunities to have conversations with people that have conflicting views as me, have never been friends with anyone that looks like me, acts like me, thinks like me, giving people the opportunity to see kind of what my upbringing was like and the experiences that I've had. And I think that I was told from a really young age to be silent and to not give my opinion and to not get into arguments, especially when everything was going around about Palestine. Like, my family was like, don't get involved, you don't need to get into politics, kind of thing, where it's just like, just stay out of the politics, because we are byproducts of what real harm the media can do to taint your, the way that people view about you. And whatever's happening in Palestine is like a really good example of that, to show people don't think of us as humans. People don't think of us as like people that have livelihoods outside of war, outside of destruction. And I think speaking up about it and making it clear that, we do exist, we do have experiences, especially everyone that's first-generation citizens to this country. It's our duty and responsibility to talk about our experiences. And I've taken on a lot of leadership roles on and off of campus. That has certainly been something that I've never seen growing up. It was one of the reasons why I became a leader and wanted to be a leader, is because there was never anyone that looked like me or acted like me or thought like me. And I was always a outsider in any space that I was ever in. So I turned to leadership to know that, I have to be the one, I guess, as cliche as that sounds. I just have to be the one to make sure that, the representation is there. And I said this earlier, but really like having a panel like this, having more events that surround and uplift and highlight the real experiences that we have because of our identity is super important, and it needs to continue and it needs to be consistent.
Yeah, I think Amin set the bar pretty high, but Actually, the terrorist thing, I feel like it goes for everyone kind of at this table. I'm certain. But I got called a terrorist when I was a kid too, in elementary school. Like, oh, do you have a bomb in your backpack? And it never got to me. Maybe my perspective was different, but it never got to me like, oh, I got called a terrorist, so let me go, cry to my mom or dad. It was more like, are you stupid? What kind of kid has a bomb in their backpack in elementary school? Like, use your brain. Challenge the perspective. The main thing I like to tell people, whatever you're being fed, it's probably not the truth. Especially when it's being forced down your throat through common media, through social media, through whatever it may be. It's not the truth. I'm gonna go more on the Afghan side just because it's a post-war country, war-torn country. It's in shambles. Well, recovering though. But regardless, terrorist thing or not terrorist, man. Come on. It's a beautiful country, but in terms of stereotypes itself, a week doesn't go by that Afghanistan is mentioned in a negative manner on the news or any social media. A few months ago there was everywhere, education is banned for women. No, it's not. It's not. It's actually not. I'm not even kidding. But every news media and outlet was saying women can't go to school. I swear they're making it up. Okay, I have cousins who were in university in Afghanistan. This is not fake news. My news is not fake. Theirs is. Just to be clear. But regardless, it's just, I guess everybody kind of has a similar experience. We're not bad people. Don't use that misconception that you hear on news or related to other people. I mean, sure, yeah, bad people come from everywhere, but that doesn't mean I'm going to start stereotyping every group of people, every ethnicity, be ethnocentric or racist towards different groups of people just because of the misconceptions that I have or that a person would have about a certain group of people because of one person or because of one group. Or for example, the Taliban, supposedly Afghan, not with that. But that doesn't mean we're all, a group of terrorists, because we're not. We're good people, But the fact of the matter is that people won't, like Amin mentioned, people won't go outside of their comfort zone, and their mind would rather just take a place where it's like, oh, I hear this on the news, I'm gonna accept it just because it's the news won't lie. Goddamn, the news lies all the time, right? But yeah, I guess everybody kind of covered everything else, so that's all I have to add.
I think you have to think about for every one person that's confident enough to say something or to make a negative remark, how many people have those preconceived notions but just aren't confident in saying them, and to what extent they believe it in. I had a professor in undergrad that said the local government is going to affect your life so much more than the national government, and I didn't understand what that meant until I got older. And I realized what she meant was like most of your life is from you waking up, being with your family, going to work on those streets, going to that job within your local community and coming back. And the idea that she was trying to portray was we have these ideas on how to combat stereotypes, how to combat xenophobia, racism, but how much time are you willing to spend away or devote away from your family and building a better future for just your little circle and be an activist? So that's why I have a lot of veneration for the people that do decide to spend so much time being an activist and speaking out against those things. Because for me, I can go down two paths. I can think, my family worked so hard to be here. Now I'm at a point where I can finally start providing for them. And I can just cut off everything else and just make sure that their future is better, because no matter what happens, no matter how much of a right track I'm on, I know that there's still going to be people that have that perception. Or I can devote some more of my time to combating this stuff. I've sort of found a confluence in doing so through writing. I've always been passionate about writing, so as I progressed through school and am about to enter my professional journey, I've sort of been more open and vulnerable about writing about my life story through venues like the Physical Therapy Association and even CSUN recently. I wrote an article about my life, and I had an influx of people saying that they felt inspired, that they related to it, which was on one hand humbling, but on the other hand, it's pretty sad to know that so many people relate to that stuff, because I think that I'm sort of an anomaly in some way, and then you realize people have gone through so much more. So, we all know exactly how you combat these things. I think we've heard about them time and time again, but you have to ask yourself, do you have that time and commitment in order to make that happen? Take time away from your family and what you want to do in order to be an activist? And if so, are you a bad person if you don't do it and you just think, I just want to protect my people? And I come from the perspective where I don't think you should vilify someone that says, I just want to make sure that my family is safe and protected and cared for. And I want to follow my religious and cultural background, and whatever happens, happens, and I'll do whatever I can in my capacity.
All right, so this next one, we actually have a final student that is not here on the panel. And I'm going to be reading this student's story. She's not here for reasons that we'll go into in the story. But I'm going to read you basically her story. So she wrote, "You are hearing my voice, but the face speaking is not mine. I've chosen to speak anonymously today because even here, thousands of miles from Palestine, my words carry risk. I watch in horror as students on other campuses lose their visas and face deportation and imprisonment simply for trying to support our people. If my identity were known, I could be punished, and my family back home could suffer even more. But just so we're clear, anonymity isn't about hiding my pride. It's just the only way I can share my story without endangering myself and those I love. I come from Gaza, Palestinian roots. I carry my family's true home in my memory, even though I've never set foot there. My grandfather was born in a village just north of Gaza, and sadly, the original name of it has been lost. The land there has changed, and Israeli settlements now sit on it. My grandfather spent his childhood tending olive trees and racing down dusty hills. I imagine him a barefoot boy with sunlight on his shoulders, laughing among the silvery leaves. Then came 1948, the Nakba. Commemorated every year on May 15th, it refers to the time when more than 750,000 Palestinians were expelled from their homes during the creation of the State of Israel. Villages were destroyed, people were massacred, and there was systematic forced removal of people from their houses and lands, starting the Palestinian refugee crisis that is still going on today. People in major cities got news quickly of the Nakba, and some were able to flee to neighboring areas. Others were killed for staying back. But my grandfather's village was rural. It goes without saying this was the time before television had come to the region, so spreading news took time. The news of the Nakba did not reach my grandfather's village. So he was sitting one morning, completely normal, in his home eating a breakfast of cucumbers from the garden and freshly made bread when the sky tore open. His house was bombed. The blast threw him across the room, and when he regained consciousness, he was staring at his parents' lifeless bodies. An instant orphan. Miraculously, his baby brother was still alive, cradled in his mother's arms and nursing at his mother's chest, even as she lay gone. My grandfather was just 12 years old. He scooped up his baby brother and his 5 little sisters and took off running. To where? As he ran through the streets, passing by relatives' houses, each one seemed to blow up right in front of his eyes. He didn't understand why. He didn't know who was bombing or what was happening. One of his aunts called out, "We have distant relatives in Gaza to the south. Go find them." Uncertainty was burning in his chest, but finding safety for his younger siblings kept him going. He walked through the night until he finally reached what is today Gaza. He found his relatives, and they did shelter the children briefly, but safety felt as distant as the stars. So determined, he pressed on toward Egypt. Life in refugee camps in Egypt tested him. The dust, the hunger, the endless wait, so he kept moving. This time to Oman, where at last he built a home of stone and laughter married another Palestinian exile, who was my grandmother, and raised children who carried Ghazan lullabies in their hearts. My mother was one of those children, learning every story of our heritage beneath Omani skies, but never tasting the cucumbers of the forgotten village of Palestine. Oman eventually granted them citizenship, and the place of birth in their passports was written Gaza. My grandfather tried to tell the officials, but I'm not Gazan. I was born in a forgotten, abandoned village north of Gaza. But it was no use. The village no longer exists. So from then on, my grandfather became Gazan. When people ask me where I'm from today, I say I'm a Palestinian woman from Oman. People ask me if I'm from the West Bank or Gaza. If I tell them neither, it would be too complicated to explain the entire history of the region and my people. So I just say Gaza. I am Gazan now, but I'm not. At weddings in our family, I still remember the whole neighborhood surging forward in Debka, our feet stamping out centuries of hope. I see my grandfather, frail with age, yet tapping his cane in time with the drum, his spirit unbowed. A fun Gazan tradition is any time there's clouds in the sky and it looks like it's about to rain, people cook lentils with olive oil dipped with bread. This tradition has been passed down so much so that even today, if I see clouds, my first thought is to make lentils. So whenever heavy clouds gather, my kitchen fills with the scent of lentils simmering in olive oil, the promise of rain and resilience in every spoonful. Sometimes I ache to reclaim customs lost to exile, to find the old songs that have slipped away as we learned Omani ways. And I bear the weight of stereotypes every day. Whispers that I must be a terrorist because of my name or my heritage, even though our land once knew Christians, Jews, and Muslims living side by side in peace. I carry my grandfather's story in my blood, and I stand here today determined that no fear or policy will silence our history or dim the light that we've carried on across deserts and oceans. So that's her story. She's a student at CSUN. And obviously she can't answer any questions because she's not here, but she just wanted to have her story told. But we do have here these lovely panelists, so we'd like to open it up to questions from the audience. Anything?
I think my question is just like, what are some ways that like being Middle Eastern on campus has been hard for you, and like what are some ways that people can help?
Not all of us are Middle Eastern, by the way.
Oh.
There's North African, there's East Asia, South Asia.
I could start. I mean, I have particular experiences. I could speak to just generally being a student and then being a student within my leadership capacity. I think the biggest thing is that it's hard to find other people that look like me or are like me. And to say that, I'm not even trying to be specific. I'm just trying to even say people within the Swana region. I know we have like a couple clubs. I mean, taking this class, so we're all in the same class, but taking the class that we're in really did kind of like open my eyes to like, oh wait, there are more, you know? And I think that we're in the shadows for a lot of reasons. A lot of it is for our safety. A lot of it is because we're told to be in the shadows. So that's kind of been hard to just like find other people like me. And as soon as I do, I like cling to them and I feel like an idiot. And that I'm weird. But I do it to just say like, oh my God, I've like not never seen, but like, you know, the only Arabs I grew up with, or even Syrians in particular, I grew up with were the ones that I like went to church with. It wasn't like anyone that I like voluntarily was like, you know, you're cool, I want to be friends with you, and we have something in common or whatever. I think that's one thing, and then I think being in like my leadership capacity. So, God, I'll just say it. So, in Associated Students, I serve as the president. And so that's it is a lot for me to battle with my identity, because I have a lot of people expect a lot out of me to act a certain way and represent a certain way. And I think the biggest challenge that I've had to undergo is how do I represent and how do I speak up in regard to Palestine and like what's happening on campus and how people think and act on campus. And I think my biggest thing is like realizing that, you know, at least for me personally, I don't think activism is going to bring everything that, you know, Arabs actually want. I think a lot of Arabs just want a safe space to express themselves and a safe space to grow, and a group of people and resources and, you know, people to share common experiences with one another. And, you know, obviously it's for my safety as well. I know we have a very large Zionist population on this campus, and, you know, I'm also, you know, have to work with those people and I have to interact with them in my role. It's definitely it's a challenge, but it's a challenge that I'm okay with, because I think the greater good of what I'm doing is I'm bringing my opinions and my perspectives into spaces that haven't been in before. You know, a lot of the spaces that I'm in, they've never heard the light of day of someone that's from the Swana region or Arab in specific, and et cetera. So that's what
Before you ask that question, can I build on this point as well? To continue answer your question, if I may, and please forgive me if anything I say is incorrect. Courage is contagious. And what do I mean by that? When an individual feels that they have the ability to share a personal story, or even, for example, all the other students here who are sitting on this panel, that is a very contagious thing. To see someone who's open to sharing. So even one way of supporting someone from a different culture is actually being able to show up in an authentic, genuine way without hurting someone else's capacity. And so this is kind of individually what I think people can all do, is just being more genuine self while understanding that implication of hurting and helping someone's capacity. Additionally, more on a systematic approach, the MEIS department, or like the Middle Eastern Islamic Studies department, is definitely struggling to, especially now more than ever, every campus is at risk of having this department shut down. Every campus. We just saw Trump and Harvard do a standoff, a bunch of other universities, Columbia University, and so we're seeing a lot of universities be directly threatened in that capacity. So, you know, reaching out to individuals like Ustadh Samaya, saying, hey, how can I as a student be able to support your guys' department, just like every other department. Like the fact that a department can be silenced, this is terrifying. If any institution is able to pull apart education that you can learn from, we're witnessing a new type of censorship that we have not seen in a long time. So being able to individually be authentic and systematically help your own brother or sister in need, because if someone else has the ability to be silenced, that means what is stopping them from coming after me as well. That's all. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Alaikum assalam.
I have a question for the gentleman, and all you all are courageous, but this one is remarkable, really, just by your look. Because, like, I know what I go through going through the airport. What is your life like when you go through the airport? And I'm curious to know that, because they take so long with me just with a hijab. But with your look, how do you cope with that every day? And men like yourself has saved my life in the ER. You know, doctors, you know, my hat come off for you. You're amazing. What's your life like at the airport?
I appreciate that. I think at the airport, my sister probably had more to go through. I probably got stopped once, and just for an extra background check, my sister has missed 1 or 2 flights because of it. To broaden up that question a little bit, it's that idea when you enter a room, and I think it's something people of color or people from different heritages understand, but it's so hard to articulate to someone else. You enter a room and someone doesn't think about you the right way, you sort of know. But it's things like you can't articulate it, and since we want something so tangible, it's hard for us to get that experience out. But I mean, you know it, and I'm sure so many of people in this room know it. I mean, someone's looking at you another way, but you don't. There's no way for you to write it or for you to relate to someone. You just have to say, that person has a negative perception of me, and there's nothing I can really do to show someone. So being in, also to your point about being in the medical field, one of my reasons of being in a medical field and going into physical therapy, I mean, I think so much about the people I'm going to help, because so much of these regions either don't know about the services that they have access to, or people aren't treating them at their full capacity. I mean, we hear the statistics about the care that a Caucasian American versus African American, especially women, get from other primary healthcare doctors.
Yeah.
And the only way you can combat that is not by talking about it and just telling them, hey, maybe you should give them more care. It's to be in those fields, be in those positions of care, be in those positions of power so you can provide support. So I appreciate you for what you said. And I'm sure a lot of us have shared some of those sentiments.
So on social media, I see a lot of like beautiful places, like for tourism and stuff. But a lot of my white friends are still like, I'm sure they see it too. It's just they still think that Arab countries, like Swahili countries, North Africa and like Pakistan and stuff, are still like very third world country, and like with camels and stuff. What part of your country, not just culture, would you like people to discover about? Like we see Dubai all the time and like tourism and stuff, but when I ask my friends, oh, how do you imagine, like for example Egypt, they would think like just camels and like the pyramid and stuff. So what would you like to elaborate on?
Nice question. Yeah.
I mean, I just thought it was interesting. A few weeks ago, I had a friend from high school, and he's American, and he said, man, we should go to Pakistan. And I think like 10 years ago, I would have been like, are you being racist or what?
Right.
I think social media is doing a good job, especially people from those countries at displaying the best parts about their countries. And I think it's an effort we have to take on our part, because if, like Michelle was saying, if the news isn't really portraying it in the best way, we're the ones that have to post that stuff. And I think social media is a great venue to really show people the beautiful parts about your country, and sort of as an advertisement.
I want to add on to Samuel's point. 2 pieces of media I think we should all check out. There's a movie called The Breadwinner on Amazon Prime. Perfect representation of Afghanistan during Soviet invasion, Taliban rule, and you know, I don't know how to describe. I'd say U.S. invasion. Khalas, that's it. It's really interesting because that's if you look at that, it's like about this little girl who has to go out and support her family because her dad's locked up. And at that point it was pretty bad. During that time, you know, alhamdulillah, it's better now, but it's a good representation of what Afghanistan was during the movie set, I think 2001, but it's like more 90s kind of setting. And then the second thing is a 2-part like vlog by a YouTuber named Arab. He went to Afghanistan for a good 2 or 3 weeks. You'll see that's like an unfiltered, proper representation. You know, the whole video, it's in English, all of it. You're not gonna be guessing like, what is he guys talking about? It's all in English, you know, the people are spending time in English. But it's a really good representation of Afghanistan now, and the Breadwinner movie on Amazon Prime is a good representation of Afghanistan in the past. I think it's a good way to contrast and see how much everything's changed versus what the media has taught us and indoctrinated into us.
think for primarily my country, it's not a question of if it's a third world country, it's a question of is it safe or not. And I can definitely preface that it is a safe country to visit. Majority of my entire community is constantly visiting, whether they're Muslim, Christian, Jewish, atheist. It is a safe country to travel and visit. And there's a lot of even if you want to buy tickets and be able to go, there's so much pressure that they put on as it's oh my God, I forget what it's called, but it's there's classifications of the kind of countries you're going to be visiting, and Iran is on a red of it's terrorist list, you don't want to go there, very dangerous. But it's no, it's not like that. Even if you're someone who connects and identifies with the religion or isn't. So I think safety is something to mention that's not true how media portrays it a lot of the time.
Steve, I want to ask, you finished?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How does your family feel about your life style coming from your Christian background?
Yeah, I mean, not great. I've definitely gotten, you can assume, I've gotten backlash, and one thing about my family and Syrians, and I can for sure say a lot of other countries within the region, is they will say it to your face. They do not hold back. They'll tell you if they think that you're gaining weight, or if you're too skinny, or if you need to fix your hair, or you're looking bad, or you should have worn something different, and they'll talk shit. They'll say it to your face, and yeah. So so I've heard a lot, yeah. And I still do now. I think when I was younger, it was harder to hear because I was way more impressionable. And I can say this, and all of it has to do with my cultural upbringing. I haven't been able to fully say yes, I feel comfortable expressing myself, and I feel comfortable in who I am, expression wise, until I don't know, sophomore year of college, second year of college. I've always been in just a back and forth in my mind of do I code switch? Do I just put on this persona with my family and then go and change that when I'm out in public? And I realized that I don't really care anymore, and that my family is not going to be around forever. And I think the thing is with them, and that I've had to do a lot of real reflection, is I just don't think that they understand that I am who I am regardless of how I want to dress or how I want to act or who I love and whatever. And I just, that's that lack of education that they have because of the lack of exposure that those people have in comparison to here. And it's definitely, literally, been a journey. It's been a journey, and I'm not ever gonna say it was easy. And I feel for any out of youth that also is growing up queer and wants to express themselves differently than heteronormatively they're being taught. Truly, my heart goes out to them. It's heartbreaking, because to see another kid having to go through the same thoughts, insecurities, and identity crises that I had to go through the majority of my life. I mean, it's truly so hard. So thank you for your question.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you all for coming. Thank you to our panel.